Good afternoon, Des Moines. How you feeling? It's actually pretty nice out there, but we're gonna warm you up with all the feels and the good conversation today. If you are feeling a little bit cold in this beautiful winter weather that we're having, it is our speaker series. I have to give a big shout out before we kind of get into it today to Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines. They've actually been with us since we started this programming about 3 years ago, and we definitely could not do what we do without their amazing and unwavering support for this particular program that we do throughout the year. We also want to give a quick shout out to Sid and Pete. Sid and Pete run Teehee's Comedy Club down here in downtown Des Moines. If you haven't checked out them before, you definitely should. They're doing some really great local comedy for our art scene here in the Des Moines Metro. Again, I'm so excited. This is our first time doing a luncheon style series, so hopefully everyone's kind of taking a pause on the work situation for the day and going to tune in with us and listen to this amazing individual that we have coming today. But without further ado, I am going to introduce you to the hostess with the mostest, Destiny Woodruss.
I am so excited to be here with you all. And as Jen said, my name is Destiny Woodruss, and I go by her and she pronouns. And I'm the interim director for community diversity and education. And I have the privilege today to introduce Goddess. And I'll tell you a little bit about Goddess and their Sunseed community. So Goddess goes by they and pronouns. And the Sunseed community is the ever-evolving, sparkling love Goddess calls their journey in healing emotional, mental, and physical trauma while acknowledging dogmas and decolonizing their mind. In short, they welcome you to the wild ride that is becoming a whole human. SSE incorporates workshops, body and energy work, consulting, and podcasting to center bodies and minds, especially within queer, LGBTQIA, BIPOC, and communities who are deemed other. And without further ado, I am going to welcome onto stage Goddess. Come on out, Goddess. Ow. Come on, have a seat. Come on in here. Sit out there. Welcome to the set.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here.
I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad we're here.
Yeah, we're here together.
And viewers, I'm glad you're here, that you could witness all of the glory and the greatness of just being on stage and being seen and being alive in 2021.
All of those.
Let's get into it.
Let's do it. Let's give
it.
them something to talk about.
All right. So, when we were speaking just up here on the stage not long ago, we were talking about how it's always important and always relevant to, be present with self, and especially in spaces where we might be the only ones who look like us, or we might be the only others, so we might be the other in certain points. And so I loved when you said, Destiny, let's talk about dismantling ideas of what the seat at the table means. Mm-hmm. So without further ado, let's get into it.
So I think first we should, can we touch upon what we're talking about when we say a seat at the table?
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. So when we're talking about a seat at the table, what we're talking about is this ideal of inclusivity in your affinity groups, your organizations, your workplaces, and even in your personal lives. Like, what around me is pinpointing that I am aware of diversity, and that my life reflects that. However, that entire concept is actually pretty white when you think about it. The idea of inclusion is kind of like, I think of it as if you're like, okay, say you have a meal. You've made this meal out of the goodness of your own heart. It's prepared with like your family's favorite recipes, it's tradition, and you serve it to a group of guests, loved ones. However, some of those people might have gluten intolerances that you didn't take note of. Other people might be vegetarian. Other people, it just might not be to their taste and liking, and not be the food that they're used to. Um, the idea of inclusion is kind of like that. It's this idea of inviting people to a table where everything is prepared to your liking. And in our world, in Western world, let me be more clear, the idea is that the table is set up into the liking of white folks. And so you are inviting us to be included in what you're doing. And I don't think that that's sustainable. And I don't find that it's been healthy environments for marginalized groups. So how do we shift that and start to cook together? How do we shift that so that other ingredients are being added so that we're cooking all together, bringing in our own ideas and completely turning the table on this idea that you are now welcome into my world? We need to create a completely different world. Do you resonate with that? Like, how
I
you
feel
feeling?
that.
How's that sitting?
How it sits with me is, how do we work with people who might not have always been gluten intolerant? How do we deal with, identities that are shifting over time and being able to make space for those folks? But to your point, I do believe that we really do have to really reconsider how we're constructing the table. Should it be a table? What shape is this table? Is it a round table? Is it a floating table?
Do we need a table?
Do we need a table?
Is it accessible to all people? Yeah.
Y'all, we're getting real today.
Yes. Can you speak more to what you were talking about
Take your time, take your time.
like people shifting? Because I think that that's really important too, and we can get into that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So when I think about people shifting, I'm thinking about people shifting in ideas of what previously was and shifting to what is. In transitions, it's not easy moving from point A to B because you don't know what's in between there. So you might have somebody who was just like, you know what? I believe that the sky is blue, the sky is blue, the sky is blue. They start meeting some artists. They start talking to some astronomers. They have different and more in-depth relationships with folks that start to listen, and they start to hear what other perspectives are out there, and their identity is shifting. It's changing. It's growing. So when we think about intersectionality and growing into how we are and what we are, there is a lot of unknown there that people are grappling with. So when I hear about your questions of, do we even need a table? Yes, fam, I resonate with that.
Ooh, okay, Destiny. So you bring up such a pivotal part of this conversation, and I think it's something that I'm feeling into what you're saying because that resonates so much. I think we come to the table with the assumption that we need to be perfect and that we need to have it all together, whether we be Black, white, Asian, Latinx, we need to come with all the answers and be kind of the monoliths for our people. When really we're all coming very complex and very and ever evolving, right?
Yes.
And so how do we come with that and hold space for it in a way where we're holding each other accountable with love and with grace, but also with creating these boundaries where we're allowed to expand and express ourselves. And that's not saying I think sometimes people, let me be more specific, like white people will take that and say, well, I deserve to be heard, and I deserve for you to do the labor of doing working with me on what I'm doing wrong, and that's not what I'm saying. But what does and can be created is a space where people can come together and express and learn, but where the labor is being more spread out, and where reparations and repair are happening, and reciprocity. Reciprocity also feels important. So I'm so glad that you touched upon that, because I think that kind of changes the tone of our conversation now, because we're not coming in here like, yo, we're gonna tell you all of what you're doing wrong and you need to take notes and fix it. It really does. It changes the tone. Thank you. Thank you.
Goddess, you make it easy. You make it easy to, sit up here and have the conversation. A lot of people are really scared out there about how to have conversations around race, how to have it around gender, how to have it around changing their identities. But, a lot of what's missing is being able to have the conversations of what you are able to provide as, as the Momo, the proud Momo of the Sunseed community. And I was just so proud to see somebody who looked like me be able to give back to the community authentically themselves. And so, in thinking about your podcast and, thinking about the healing work that you do, that's a medium. That's the space right there. So what are some things that you tell people when you're consulting or on the podcast, how to show up and, where to go to find those spaces?
Yes. Okay. So I will say that Sunseed community was sparked by conversations that I was having within my own community. So I would say start with there. I like to start with asking myself when I'm formulating any type of partnerships or co-creative enterprises, if you will, what is the need that I need from this? How do I need this to nourish me? And then also, who in my circle is also in need of that? And how can we work together on birthing this? When you come from a place of that, from that, I feel like it's being really honest about not trying to make this, I'm here to serve other people. Because although you might be doing it to benefit other people in some way, you're also doing this for yourself, right? Even in business, we're doing it because we want to make a living. So it's nice to kind of get that weight off my shoulder of trying to be a savior. Because everything I talk about are things that I need in my own life, right? I need that. I need that affirmation. I need that calling in. I need all that in my own life. So that's the first thing I suggest is being really honest with yourself about if you're in a business or if you're in an organization, asking yourself, how is this nourishing me? And then how is that being reflected in the organization? What do we have, if there's a mission statement, what's the mission statement and how do I live into this mission statement? Does the mission statement even apply to me? There's a lot of nonprofits and organizations out here that are speaking in and wanting to amplify the voices of other groups. However, if you aren't a part of that other group, there's a disjointedness there, right? Because how are you then going to accurately show up for folks? That's a tough conversation to have, and that's a gap that needs to be bridged. So how do you bridge that in a way where you're being held accountable? Yeah, it's complicated, but it needs to be in conversation format, I feel too. There needs to be conversation.
Oh my goodness. Goddess, you are dropping so much knowledge right now. And for you, it seems like it's easy, it just rolls off the tongue of what to do. However, when I think about all of the organizations I've been a part of, and diverse organizations, so many different skill sets, so many different folks coming in, inclusion equity work at different points. To bring all of those people together in for a conversation, that can be really tough. So even though, the heart is there and, something in your soul is there, it's just really difficult to even try and get to that point where it's time to have the conversation. What do you say to people who are struggling with the concept of time when it comes to equity inclusion work?
Time, I think, there's this sense of urgency right now, that we need to have the solutions right away. However, I feel like that sense of urgency, although felt by everyone in different ways, has been felt by, I'm going to speak for um, myself and my community, so in a way it might be a little bit monolithic. But Black queer community, we've been saying this for hundreds of years.
Hundreds.
Black people have been saying this for hundreds of years. Like this isn't. This is about our survival, but it's not. In a way, we got pause, don't we? I feel it.
I feel the pause too.
I feel the pause.
It's a pregnant pause.
Okay,
You know why it's pregnant?
can get back
You know
to
what we're
this.
about to birth? We're about to birth a break. Take it away, Grant. And we're back. I'm glad you made it back with us. Yeah. And now guess what? We are going to get right back into talking about dismantling systems of having a seat at the table and those notions. So Goddess, pick it back up. Okay. Refresh it one time.
Pick it back up.
Pick it back up.
We were talking about urgency, and it feels different for different folks, right? So I think that it needs to start with kind of removing this idea that it needs to be always on the front lines. You need to like always be marching and doing activism work. Yes, you need to be doing that, especially as white-bodied folks. It's important that you're doing that because you are reflecting that back to your own people of the work that still needs to be done, and that it's so important that it's y'all that are doing this labor because it was y'all that started this. However, we can't just leave what you're like these ideas of Black Lives Matter and Black, queer trans lives matter out on the in the protest. Right. We need to bring that home with us. Like, how in your day-to-day life are you reflecting that you care about your Black loved ones? And I'm not talking about, when you hear about someone Black who has been murdered, on the news, going to your Black loved ones and going, "Oh, are you okay?" Like, there needs to be more to that. How are you taking workshops to dismantle your own anti-Blackness and internalized whiteness? Are you working on the ancestral trauma and generational trauma that is in your families? There's something there that we are so the trauma that was enslavement of other people wasn't just felt by the people who were enslaved. If you were to see someone being brutally, and excuse me, I do want to say like trigger warning because I want to be respectful, but if you were to see someone being brutally attacked, brutally murdered, and that was lived out in your family century after, like, years and years and years, and you were also taught that you had a right to somehow bestow that on other people, how would that affect your body? How would you pass down those ideas to your family? How would that reiterate over time? So the harm has been passed down to us across cultures, and so we need to heal that. That's something we need to address, and so it can't just be about this going through the motions of protesting, going through the motions of volunteering in these organizations that are supposed to be set up to kind of repair this work, but not really doing the work of repairing the emotional trauma. And so I think that that's important to also bring in to the conversation, especially when it comes to time, because this has gone on for a very long time, and it's going to take a very long time to heal from. And we tend to, especially in Western cultures, want to get defensive about protecting our goodness. And I'm a good person, and I do this, that, and the other for other people. And we need to kind of let go of that goodness and step into the vulnerability, and say, I'm trying to do this, that, and the other, but I realize that that's coming from a place of, I know that this is my obligation. And these are the ways in which whiteness is showing up in my life. And that's a hard place to be, and that it takes time. It can't be this immediate fix. It doesn't get changed with a march. As much as marches move people, what do you move into after that? That needs to be the catalyst, and it shouldn't even have to be the catalyst.
Goddess, why did you do that? Folks who are watching right now, as Goddess is speaking about what we can do to move forward while also acknowledging historical trauma, emotional trauma. Right now, I'm sitting with a conversation I recently had with my grandmother, who looked at what happened at the Capitol, looked at some of the historical movements that have happened, and felt like she was right back in 1965. Here in Iowa, we had issued a Black state of emergency. And, in thinking about all of what's going on right now, and also still trying to show up and not only do the work, because a lot of people like to use the term or the phrase doing the work, how, to your point, how are we feeling the work? How do we bring it home with us? And bring it into when is the next time that we come together, this time, when we think about this notion of time as fluid. So for me to experience what I do on a daily basis of always being questioned or thinking about my intelligence level, and people going, well, I don't know if she is really a doctoral student. I don't think so. And I'll tell you, yes, I am. But, how do we grapple with working in the spaces of doing the work and giving back to ourselves, also with other people? I'm thinking about, reconciliation. And for viewers watching over their lunch hour, thank you for showing up and thank you for tuning in. It's just amazing that you're here with us in real time to be a part of this awesome conversation. And it's really a dialogue. It's open. So while we are not able to see you, it's almost like we could feel the viewers, feel you over your lunch break and still making time for us. Because it's almost like that time is fluid, that you made the space for us. So we appreciate you for making the space. But how do we show up, every day, Goddess? What does that mean to show up in trauma?
So I have a couple questions. You want to take one or two?
We've got questions.
All right. So the first one is, I would love to hear more about ways to be a stronger ally or supporter of my more intersectional groups and friends without appearing to try to take things over. This is from a white cis queer male.
That's a fabulous question.
Can
On
we
to you
answer this
guys.
together?
You want to answer that together?
Yeah, I would
Okay,
love
you first.
to. Okay.
This is going to take a while to answer.
Okay. I'm gonna fill into that white queer male. I think it starts by finding your own intersectionalities, because there's this default box of what the ideal person, or like what a complete human being is, and that's a white cis male. So start by taking the time to feel in, and I've done this for myself, feel into my own intersectionalities, and notice, like, within your community, your chosen family, how those intersectionalities are like reflected. And how that helps affirm you. And then from there, kind of expand outward into, how am I reflecting back and affirming, those same loved ones' intersections. And that, it's so nuanced, right? Because you don't want to, what do you call it, make someone idealistic, or like, how there's like the idea of like a strong black woman, you're just like, I just
Right.
love you, you're so strong, you're so strong. Not doing that, but I mean, like, really looking at your loved ones on an individual basis, because honestly, I want to be seen. Don't y'all want to be seen? Like, don't you want to be seen? So how do you practice that? How do you truly see the intersections of your loved ones, and how do you not tokenize that, or not try to extract extract and define them by their culture, but like seeing that as part of them, but not the only part of them. And that's really nuanced. And like, I feel like I want to like sit down and talk with you on like a one-on-one basis and get to know more about, I want to ask you, like, say more,
Yeah.
because there's so much more there.
Yeah, that's why I said, you know what, you go first, because I knew I would need some time to really start to get into, answering a question like this. And it really does come down to creating and making that space, asking the question and being ready to sit with it. I feel like it's the next step. And so I echo what God has had to say. I know we have two questions, so I'll limit it to just that. And I'm with you. I almost do want to have a separate conversation with them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that also, a good thing to do is, some of my friends that were white-bodied friends who were supporting me during this time, one of them actually, like, instead of just asking me, like, how can I support you, what they did was like list the things that they had the capacity for. They said, I can help you with editing
That's
things.
huge.
I can just listen. I could do this. I could do that. And like, it took so much of the burden of not only trying to grapple with how this point in history was like physically affecting my body,
Yes.
and feeling so unsafe, and also like trying to, like, do the labor of like telling my friend, okay, I need this, that, and the other, when I couldn't even figure that out for myself at the time. Like, I needed, and so so maybe if you realize your situation, like your power dynamic, maybe like starting to let that crumble away, and saying, this is what I can offer. I'm here. Boom. Like, I'm gonna buy you a meal today.
Because everybody needs food.
Yeah, always.
Everybody needs to eat.
Always. So maybe like that could be like an action point, but definitely like starting with self, Yeah, starting
And
myself
food.
too. And food.
What's the next question, Hillary?
He did say thank you so much.
Oh,
The next one is, where does one start when trying to explain this idea to family members who are so sheltered they've never heard of it, never came in contact with this? They see what the media displays, and that's how they form their opinion.
Do they mean like, yeah, because do they mean how to address what's going on in the world with the elections and police brutality, or just like talking about whiteness?
Probably
Talking about whiteness?
Talking about whiteness.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So the buck has been passed to me. That's fine. That's fine. You know,
I'm
we don't
looking
roll.
at you like,
I know you're looking
you
at me.
already know, but yeah.
Okay, all right. So, this is always a very difficult conversation to have. And being able to recognize that you are in that space where speaking about whiteness as a black person, I will speak for me, as a black person, is always very difficult because you're always trying to walk that line that you have to toe. But if you are a white person who is trying to have this conversation with a predominantly white family, it's going to be pretty tough to get into the notion of, you know what, this is how your whiteness is showing up in your everyday life, and this is how it's showing up for other people, when for them, being white is as natural as breathing. So having to dismantle the idea of even whiteness, or to even deconstruct what whiteness means, God must have felt something. Deconstruct what that means. That's going to be where the true work begins, because it's then about thinking about what documentaries you watch as a family, being able to make that space as a person who wants to hold that conversation. So a lot of people want to have the conversations, but sometimes you might need something to grapple with, something to watch together, something to sit over a meal and talk about as a good starting point for you.
I love that because it's very tangible. That's something where you can kind of watch it like removed from yourself, and then like have a conversation about, okay, let's bring this back home.
Yeah.
And like ask like ourselves, like, how is this showing up in our day-to-day lives? That's a wonderful suggestion. Thank you, Destiny. I first want to say, like, address something you said about like towing that line, because is what you're trying to say is when you have these conversations with white people, are you trying to find ways to like not hurt their feelings, or not have to do more labor than you have the energy for? Or like, what do you mean by towing that line?
Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
So that means for me, in different scenarios and in different organizations, I have to show up differently. So if I'm on my 9-to-5 job, I can't say, you always talking over me. That's a problem historically. There has to be a way that I could say, you know what, I really did have something to say. When we talk about this again and bring it up in conversation, here's what I mean. Here's a signal I can give you. So I have to edit myself in a certain way. But if I'm talking with a white person who is my friend, and I say who is my friend because we're actively doing work together to try and understand where we're coming from. If I'm talking to my white friend and I tell my white friend, hey, white friend, when you automatically took the bill for that, I'm like, oh gosh, now people think I can't pay. And it could be something as humorous as that, but then what that's also telling them is, oh shoot, that's right. Let me be more cognizant of, doing Dutch, a bit, but thinking about how we're interacting together. So it's different when I'm talking to, white friends versus white colleagues versus, white people in organizations that I might have interactions with, and how their operation, like, automatically is affecting me in a negative way. So I have to constantly be on guard with that.
Okay. Can we come back to that after we address this? Yeah, I would love to come back to that.
Okay.
So When talking with your white loved ones, white people specifically talking with your white loved ones, again, like starting a conversation like that of where you're asking questions instead of kind of coming from this defensive point of like, what you're saying is not okay. Like, yes, it is not okay. And sometimes that works. So some people, that's like their form of like language. However, another point, or like another way you can take this is like, what did you mean by that? And then kind of go backward. Like, a question I really loved was, who taught you how to be white? Like, what about this thought made you think that it was okay? You know what I mean? Like, let's take that back. So, like, for instance, let's take the idea of work ethic. And I think that can be across, cultures, right? This idea that you have to really work hard in order to deserve a life, to deserve the basic human rights. Who taught you that? Was it your parents? Was it your grandparents? And what about their lives told them that was what they needed to do? In a workshop that I teach called the Inner Wisdom Keeper, we do that. Like, I have it for white-bodied individuals, and non-black individuals, and then black individuals. And in it, we kind of like, we talk about values we have. So when your family is watching TV and they're watching police brutality, and the thing that comes up, well, they shouldn't have talked back to the police officer. What about that has kind of like trickled down? What about that thought has kind of trickled down from generation to generation about ideas on authority, about ideas on your place in the world, and ideas upon the fact that, standing up for yourself should immediately be answered back in such brutal actions? Why is that your automatic go-to? So, like, starting to kind of like talk to your family about values. Are there things in your family that like you're just like, that doesn't really make sense? Like, ask your parents, like, hey, this idea that we've had about, like, I don't know. We'll go back to like volunteering at a homeless shelter, but then in the same token, talking about how maybe those people might have deserved it, or being really judgmental of one type of person who is experiencing homelessness or another type of person who is experiencing homelessness. Like, backtracking that, asking your family questions. There's so much about our histories from culture to culture that just no longer serve us, and we feel it holding us back. And I don't think it needs to hold us back anymore. But it's kind of going about it in a way where you're not, if there's defensiveness, it can kind of be met with like this like push of curiosity. And also, why are you defensive? Yeah.
So before we break, I'm going to give you these two because these are great questions. It's a two-parter. What's your favorite thing about being black? And what is something that has brought you all joy in the past week?
Favorite thing about being black, though. That's an excellent question. Who wants to go first?
I can't separate that. Like,
Okay, I'm going to go first. One of my favorite things about being black is going to small towns where there are also other black people, and they look at you and you look at them and you go, I see you. Because there's not too many of us in there, and you have to acknowledge, show some respect, that you just show some respect and that their presence is acknowledged. There's something so special about that. I love going on road trips and seeing black people on road trips, and we look at each other, we nod. I was like, I see you, I know I see you, I see you. It's just something about being able to connect in that way, even through masks. Like, I'll still nod, and there'll be the acknowledgement. So just acknowledging others' presence, especially in a small town when you feel like you're really othered.
That felt so good to hear. It felt so good to hear.
I was excited to tell you, too. That's a great question. I love that one.
I feel like being able to have this like human experience,
Yeah.
like as a Black person, period, it's all my favorite. Like
Yeah.
I can't dissect. Is it the food?
Oh, the
Is
food's
it
great.
the blessed melanin? Is it the language we use? It's
This is the
all
breaking
of
out in
it.
song and everybody might know the song.
Yes. Is it?
And on key, mind you.
I love it. I love it all. And I can't decide. I can't decide. I
And that's
love
the
being in
answer
this
right there.
conversation
I
right
love
there.
this.
Yeah.
I love this. Being able
Oh,
to just speak.
yes. Yeah, no.
This
I was
does.
like,
You feel it?
yes.
That's what it's like.
Yes.
What's one of my favorite parts about being Black is just be there. And
Yeah,
now,
we here.
guess what? We have another pregnant pause. You know what this pregnant pause is going to be? It's going to be a commercial about how to donate to Capital City Pride. And I'm here for it. Are y'all ready? It's time. Take it away, Grant. Are you all back with us? Because we're back. And we still have the question of what's brought you joy in the past week. Who wants to start it off this time? Goddess, do you want to go?
I'll go. I'll
Okay.
go. I'm gonna cheat a little bit because it was on Saturday and it was not. So it was like the day before this week. I watched for the first time Eve's Bayou
Ooh, yes.
with a fellow Black queer, and I'm gonna get Pineapple Thief
Do it.
written like tattooed on my body somewhere, because that just spoke and sung to me, and my ancestors were there and they were like, see, I told you. Like, they were like, come through. Like, and I was just like, thank you. It was just such an it was such an affirmation of some work I've been doing in my dreams. And I'm just like, something I love about black, like being Black,
Yeah.
is the ancestors. Like, they coming through hard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What's brought me joy this week? I would say what's brought me joy this week and pain was being able to say, you know what? I'm going to let go of what's not mine to hold on to. Emotionally and socially, and I'll say it's hard because grappling with this idea of being strong and this notion of what strength looks like in a Western world. And for me, being strong is being able to cry when you need to, being able to say, you know what, I don't need that extra scoop of ice cream. Because you might have lactose intolerance. There might be some things that you have to grapple with in your life. And for me, I would say being able to let go and say, you know what, I don't own that. That's not my space. So that's what brought me joy. Excellent 2 questions. That was awesome.
You're good with boundaries. I'm going to ask you another one. What is the hardest part about being queer and Black in Des Moines, and what is the biggest opportunity for Des Moines as a whole to improve our community for POC and queer POC folks?
Ooh.
All right, for sake of time.
We gonna go in on this?
We're gonna have to tag team this one together. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Get into it, Goddess.
right now, I just moved back about a year ago from Colorado, but this is my hometown, is Des Moines, Iowa. So the hardest thing about being back is trying to find my people and trying to find lovers and friends and like intimate connections. where you're not having to wade through all of these white people trying to like get at you. Like you just like that's hard. That's exhausting. And COVID,
hard.
like you can't go out and meet people. It's hard.
Right, and you're a hugger. You like to hug.
I do love to hug.
You like to hug when you
Yeah.
meet people, and it is tough.
It
I
is.
can feel that energy about you. It's like, oh, she just wants to hug. And I was like, oh, I'm a hugger too.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah,
You know,
it's hard. It's
and-
hard.
Oh my gosh, navigating this space. I mean, so my wife and I moved here December 2018. So we were welcomed by the polar vortex that year. So we've had some interesting experiences, and we're in an interracial marriage. So being in an interracial marriage, my wife is a cisgender white woman who's also from the Midwest. And sometimes people will meet me and they go, oh, you're Destiny. And I'm like, yes, and you're Kelly. I'm glad we've established our names. I mean, what else do you want me to say? So I would say just being able to be comfortable with being other is something that I've been used to a while. But being here in Des Moines, it's heightened a little bit, which is fine. I'm a Leo. I could deal with being able to speak with folks and meet new people. But, for those who are a little bit more shy, I do wonder about what we can do to better help and support, Black queer folks who aren't as outspoken, who aren't as comfortable yet being out, or maybe they're newly out. We do have newly the Iowa Queer Communities of Color Coalition. I'll put a little plug out there. It is. It did go ahead and start, and we're still forming that community, and for that reason, which is how do we navigate being a person of color and queer at the same time here in Iowa. So.
Right. I'm glad you actually brought them up because they just brought out a questionnaire of like, what do you want like to do, like what fun things, and it sounded like even just being in conversation with other Black queers here in the community that we just want places to just hang out and be ourselves, chill. But we're also desiring to be seen and like start that like to have places to cry and have places to speak our truths. A lot of us are, healing from a lot of like, family things, spiritual things. So we want both. we want to be nuanced. We just want to have places to be nuances and be ourselves like everyone else.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right, I have another one. How have you practiced rest during this time?
Oh, yes. I'm so excited about this question.
Oh my goodness, you take it.
Okay. Ooh, rest during this time. I have laid my behind down.
Wow.
Like, for real, yes. Like, actually listened to my body and just been like, you know what? Today is not the day for you to do all this work. You need to rest, because if you're not resting, you can't come and do this work with your whole body. Even today, I had to because you were like, you hungry, and I didn't eat today. I need to go eat. We were about to eat up on stage here.
We sure were. We debated that. I was like, listen, we can just be up on here, be on ourselves, and eat some food, because you're hungry.
Can we still order?
I mean, we still can. It's up to you now. This is your show. I'm helping just navigate and steer this shit.
But this is my rest, being in in conversation with people who are just listen, you can just be yourself. You don't have to put on no airs. Don't perform. The rest has looked like that. Also, I nerd out to a lot of herbs and learning about herbs. So rest has looked like working with herbs that are helping me do dream work and connect with my ancestors on a stronger basis. So rest to me is really just about sinking into my deliciousness, my delicious body, my delicious soul, and just being like, what do you need? What do you need?
Ooh, that is so juicy. Wow. When I think about rest, I think about being able to laugh in that moment and fully be present. I love to give people belly laughs. I don't know what it is. I've never been in a place where we've not laughed and had a moment to connect with just self in that moment. I had an advisor once in undergrad, and there was a time when I was looking at course registration and she saw me and she started to burst out laughing. That was my first interaction with this woman. She just saw me and she started to laugh. I was like, what is going on here? I had to, enroll myself. I couldn't even, get the advisor to do the advisory role. But it's just something about being able to sit with that. I think it's so powerful. But that to me is my rest, is to not think about what happened before, what's happening in the future, but to be there in that moment.
Yeah. That presencing.
The presence.
Yes. Same with you in this presence.
I mean, you're doing it too, though. See,
love
the
it.
tickled, see how tickled Goddess is? This is my rest.
I love it. I love it.
love
I love
that.
that we can laugh together too. That feels important.
And
That
it feels
so-
good.
Yeah. Do we have another one? We got them all? Okay. Can we come back to the comment that you made earlier? Because I want to close out with something tangible to give to folks.
Okay.
Because I know people like action steps. If you're like me, you're like, okay, I got homework. I'm gonna do this. We ready?
I'm ready. Let's get into it.
Okay, so I'm gonna fill back into what you were saying. Okay. So you were talking about the difference between talking with a coworker versus talking with someone that you know on a personal level. Right. And those are two very different things, right? You know this person on an intimate level, and you know that they're invested in the relationship because they love you.
Right.
Yeah, they care about you.
Right.
Can I ask some questions around that? Maybe it'll help us come into some tangibility here.
Ask all the questions.
Okay, cool.
Limited amount of time, like condensed milk.
So when it comes to your coworkers and things like that, what is the connection there that drives you? What about that connection makes you want to say, I'm invested in this and I'm going to work toward continuing this relationship, versus when it's a person, someone that you're friends with? What's the difference there?
Well, for me, in confronting what was wrong, or an issue that happened on the work setting, there's this notion of what professionalism looks like. Okay, and for me to just say, yo, that's not cool, that's not always something that's accepted for me to say in that particular way. So I have to say, you know what, this is what happened during this point in time. Here's how it impacted me, but here's how we can move forward from this. Mm-hmm. That for me takes a lot of work.
It is.
It's a lot of work. There's a lot of filters for me to have to go through. So of me just saying, hey, that's not right, that's not cool, that should just be the end of it. But depending on how they react, I have to even respond differently to that. So if I'm already in that, what's perceived as what a professional mode is, it's easier for me to explain what happened, instead of me having to start off with, that's not right. So, consistency. Versus if they're my friend, I can say, yo, that wasn't cool. And they'll say, oh, shoot, did I do that thing again? I said, yeah, you did that thing again.
Yeah. It seems like there's almost you're working together to oh, I realized I just did this thing.
Right.
Where in the other one, you were doing all the labor.
Yep.
Not only were you having to call the person in, you were also having to navigate their feelings and your
Right.
own, and then come up with a solution for the thing that they did to hurt you.
And then I might even forgot what the thing was that they did.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work.
You
people.
get caught up in
That's
those.
a lot of work.
Yeah. I get that all the time when you're in an argument or a disagreement, and you're like, I forgot what was bad, but I know it was real. And I think, you know what, that's natural.
Yeah.
And I think the idea of this professionalism where we have to check our emotions at the door
Right.
is really unhealthy, because that's when you get silencing, because you don't want to seem overly upset. You don't want to feel like you're the only one that feels this way in the workplace, when I guarantee you there are probably other people that feel some type of similarity to you in the workplace. Right. So when it comes to situations like that bringing us back to this idea of like removing the table, that idea that you have to check your emotions at the door, that you have to check your entire being at the door and only bring this like perfect idea of yourself into a workplace so that you can then be kind of like this robot that's just doing what you're told. When really you have ideas, and those ideas are built upon your emotions and your experiences. That's probably like one of the reasons why diversity is kind of like amped up in businesses, is because like they want, like, we want your ideas, because they know that we have something to bring to the table that is vastly different from the workforce that they currently have, which is probably predominantly white, right? So you
Right.
can't just check that at the door. And that's and but like when you're inviting people like to that table, you're asking them to check that at the door. You're basically saying, we want your ideas, but without all the flavoring that is you. And that's just not realistic for not only like, marginalized people who are marginalized, but not ideal for white folks either. Like there's probably tons of things that they check at the door.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember bringing up at a work meeting, what are we going to do to make sure that our emotional health and wellness is okay? Like, how are we going to show up for people while we're showing up for other people? So how are we going to show up inside this organization, and how are we going to, encourage that out in our community that we serve?
Yeah.
It was radio silence. Nobody really knew what to say to that in that point in time. But hopefully, conversations like this, the dialogue that we're having today, thinking about Sunseed community and the consultation work that you all have, the podcast, being able to connect, to our audience who might have some ideas, who might even, be struggling with some of the issues that we're talking about today. I think that's so important. And before we start wrapping up, I just want to say thank you so much for being here today, for showing up every day as you do.
Thank you. Thank you for doing your thing too. You are a wonderful light in this world. I'm just so blessed. I'm so blessed. We even happen to be in Des Moines, Iowa.
Well, thank you. I'm so tickled. All tickled in all the good ways, folks who are viewing at home. I'm all right. Just know I'm basking in this. This was so needed for folks who are watching. This was so needed for me. It is always an honor to serve in the community in this light. And the stage that we're on, we're at Teehees. Shout out to Sid and Pete, right? Sid and Pete. And we've also got our sponsors, Federal Home Loan and Bank of Des Moines, who keep sponsoring these events. And we've got viewers like you who love to watch. Shout out to PBS. That's where I got that line. Yeah, I love PBS.
They ain't supporting us, but
they're not supporting us, but we're supporting them. We were inspired. And the companies who are watching and want to be a part of showcasing how they could be a part, and making sure that we have lights, making sure that we have mics, and snacks, because food's important. We've established that one. So if any of you all who are watching and you're a restaurant and say, you know what, they're dope, I want to make sure that they're nourished when they're on stage, we're happy to take donations. And it's just an awesome time to be alive, to be on the stage with you guys, and to have the audience start to have those questions of what we can do to support our family's growth in that. So I don't know what else to say other than it's just a blessing to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a blessing. Keep asking these questions,
Yeah.
and when you're asking them, look toward BIPOC people. Look toward paying those people for this work, because there's people out here who have some amazing ideas, and they're teaching workshops, they're writing books, and a lot of the questions that were asked, there's answers in there. I have answers. Sometimes I get nervous on the stage, so hit me up. I'm happy to talk on a one-on-one basis, because these conversations are important.
I love it. And what's also important is that you all know that we're on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok for the youngins, TikTok for the older folks. I'm not on TikTok, but I rock with you who TikTok.
You do the TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok.
Get it?
You got it. Right? We're at Teehees. I'm feeling inspired, folks. So Well, just be sure as you're watching, keep those questions coming, and be tuned for the next speaker series in February, which we're so excited to have you with. Any final words from anyone?
Thank you both so much.
Thank you. Glad to be here. We're going to take it away. Have a good one, folks.
I am not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown 'em out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apologies. This is me. Another round of bullets hits my skin. Well, fire away, 'cause today I won't let the pain sink in. We are bursting through the barricades and reaching for the sun. We are warriors. That's what we belong. I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us. Oh, we are glorious. When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown 'em out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apologies. This is me. When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown 'em out. This is brave, this is bruised, this is who I'm meant to be. This is me.